Hello, welcome to Fast Forward, where we have ongoing conversations about living in the future. I'm Dan Costa, editor-in-chief of PCMag.com, and this is a special South by Southwest 2018 edition of Fast Forward, where digital pioneers, leaders, business leaders, and technologists all meet in Austin, Texas once a year and have a lot of beers and talk about technology. I have the founder and CEO of Huge with me, Aaron Shapiro. Aaron, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, and thank you for coming to our bar here. You
Absolutely.
can see we're in this nice outdoor little place that we hang out in South by every year.
We're shooting. I don't think we want to tell everybody where exactly we are because we want to keep it a little bit of a secret. But here in the center of Austin, you've got a little speakeasy thing going on. Yep. It is early in the morning, so it is empty. It was not this empty at midnight last night.
Not this empty at midnight.
When I was here last night. But this is actually our second interview.
Yes.
So if you want to know about Huge, about the state of the media industry, go back 18 months. You can find it on PCMag. We covered a lot of ground there. I want to talk to you about what you've been talking about on this South by Southwest, which is really this transition from the attention economy to the efficiency economy. And there's some really important lessons here and some pretty scary news for both advertisers, for marketers, and for the media industry, of which pays my bills.
It's a big shift.
It's a big shift, and it's some scary stuff. So let's get right into it. The concept that the media is dying is so cliche that it's got its own Twitter account, which is very amusing. But the more I look at the industry, and certainly listening to you speak, there are some really significant changes that are happening right now. How do you see this shaping up?
Yeah, so there are very big shifts that are happening, and a lot of it is driven by the emerging trend of machine learning and data taking over so much of digital. And what's happening is a big shift in the underlying economic of how the internet has worked. For 20 years, it's all been based on attention. We get all this free stuff, like reading PC Magazine, getting email on Google, Facebook, for this trade that we make where we get it for free, and in exchange, those services sell our attention, sell our eyeballs to advertisers, and that's how it's monetized. And that's been really great for 20 years, but we've started to see the excesses of that model happen with things like the fake news and reports of addiction. And now there's a new emerging model, which I call the efficiency economy, which is really about a much more direct-to-consumer model where people are paying for what they use, and they're paying for the efficiency and utility that they're getting for the services they provide. And that's a very different way of how the internet is going to be monetizing moving forward.
It's amazing because we've gotten so much attention's been paid to making this media process more efficient, better ad targeting, using data to leverage people's interest, and then reaching them in more locations. It just seems like we've gotten to the end of that cycle where we can't be any more efficient because people just don't have any more time. They don't have any more time to actually spend looking at advertising.
That's right, and the bigger problem is that advertising isn't working as well as it used to. People see an average of 3,000 marketing messages a day. So if you're an advertiser and you've got to be one of 3,000 that consumer is going to pay attention to, that's a very, very tough battle. And there are a lot of macro trends about how advertising isn't working and they're tuning out. I can rattle off tons of stats. But the net effect is that if you're a publisher or you're a digital company that's trying to make money for advertising, that's becoming a harder and harder proposition to stay in business.
Even at its best, display advertising, and my sales team doesn't want me talking about this.
That's right.
But even at its best, display advertising has an extraordinarily low performance rate. The click-through rates are incredibly low, and even then, a lot of those clicks are by accident.
Click-through rates are very low, and what's even scarier is that the percentage of people who ever click on a banner is only about 10 or so %. So you're getting a few clicks, and those who click are very little, and even recall rate is very low. You have banner blindness, where people look at a page and they literally they're so tuned to tuning out the ads, they don't even realize they've seen the advertising. The average consumer looks at a Facebook ad for 1.9 seconds, which is basically how much time it takes to scroll past the ad down their feed. So when that's the environment and you're an advertiser, you start to think, wait a second, why am I paying for something that's not that effective? And that's why you've seen a lot of press lately by P&G, which took out $200 million of digital spend because they saw that a lot of this stuff just doesn't work and they have to recalibrate. And that creates a big problem if you're on the publisher side trying to sell this product that's just not working as well.
The other problem is that digital spend is being completely dominated by two companies.
That's right.
Which is making it very difficult for anyone that's not one of those two companies to survive online.
Exactly. Like it or not, we're in a duopoly. Over 80% of digital ad spend is controlled by Facebook and Google. So if you're not those two companies, you have a very, very tough time getting your fair share. So it's hard to get attention, and it's hard to then monetize it. And it goes beyond that, which is think about all of the publishing companies that get so much of their traffic from Google and Facebook. So what happens when they tweak their algorithm and you're just at their mercy? So it's becoming a very tough situation.
And then, in addition to that, on the web anyway, browsers themselves are just starting to just flat out block advertisements.
That's right. Chrome has announced that they're putting in ad blockers. Now, they're not completely eliminating advertising. They're just eliminating irresponsible advertising. So I think overall that's a good thing. But it does point to this broader backlash that's happening. We're seeing it in a lot of other places too. Like look at long-form video, for example, which has traditionally been the most effective ad vehicle ever created, right? So many brands have been built with 30-second ads we're forced to watch on TV. Now, guess what? The average consumer spends an hour and a half watching Netflix with no advertising. So what does that mean if you're dependent on this 30-second commercial and there are fewer and fewer places to spend your money to ensure that people are going to watch that ad?
It's amazing. When I do have to sit through a pre-roll ad, I get annoyed because I've been conditioned to not have that experience now.
That's right. 90% of people, when they're on YouTube, click through that little interstitial that at the moment that 4 or 5 seconds ends, it allows them to click through. So you're an advertiser, you spend all this money on this amazing 30-second spot to tell your story, and if you're lucky, they're going to pay attention to 4 seconds of it, and then they're gone. It's a pretty scary time.
And there's more bad news.
Yeah.
So as we move to new platforms like chatbots, like AI, voice-driven assistants, the role between the advertiser, the vendor, and the consumer, and I hope there's still room for a publisher, gets sort of mixed up a little bit, because when you ask Alexa what the best laptop is for under $500, she's going to give you maybe 1 or 2 recommendations.
That's right.
And you're just going to accept it.
That's right.
Where's the advertiser in that process? Where's the publisher recommendation? It's a totally different dynamic.
It's a totally different dynamic, and it's estimated that by 2020, half of all searches are going to be voice-based. And to your point, it creates a massive issue. And by the way, it's actually worse than what you meant for many companies, because in a lot of cases, Amazon sells private label versions of things. So not only are you going to get one recommendation you can buy, but it's Amazon's. So then what happens to all the companies that are trying to compete in that whole value chain?
That's something that we've just started to address. That it's great that Alexa does all these things for us, but how do you know you can trust her? And she's being built by a private business that has to return value to shareholders. How do you trust her? How do you trust Cortana? How do you trust Google Assistant? Or is Google? Google's done a pretty good job of keeping their search results pretty clean. But once they move into the voice space, are they going to be preferencing Google products?
Yep, it's definitely a big, interesting concern, and it's part of the broader trend, which is the verticalization of the internet. Every company, from Google to Amazon to many smaller companies, like the Dollar Shave Club example, and for shaving, has concluded that the way to be viable long term is to be direct to consumer and to own the full vertical supply chain. So if you think about the Dollar Shave Club example, instead of me going to a store and buying that razor, where you have so many different decisions and people in the chain, now it's a subscription model. So you never think about it, you have full lock-in. And of course, they were acquired by P&G. So now, presumably, that'll become, if that continues to go well, more and more of how we start to buy those products. And we're going to start to see that across many sectors, where this direct-to-consumer verticalizing the business is going to start to be the new way that people interact and the new way that companies are monetize and build their business.
There's also a social reaction to the attention economy and the things you need to do in order to succeed in the attention economy. We were talking before we started recording about the casual gaming industry, which seems like a great way to waste time. If you've ever ridden a subway in New York, you can see everybody is using some type of casual game. But when you dig into that service and you realize the economics of it, the number of people that are supporting that development, it's kind of shocking how few it is.
It's very shocking. So if you look at the stats for casual gaming, which is a $40-50 billion industry, only a small percentage of people pay for the services, because the base is free and then you get add-ons to make the game better. A small percentage of people pay, but those who do pay, they pay an average of something like $330 a month.
It's insane.
Which is insane, right? And like the only explanation for that is addiction, right?
And it probably gets tacked onto their mobile bill and blended in with everything else, so they don't see discreetly how much they're spending.
Or if they do it, they're hooked on it, right? It's an addiction, right? So that's part of the challenge, which is if you're only incented, if you're a company, your only incentive is more and more attention, get more and more people's mind share, what are you going to do? Sensationalism is going to trump truth when you look at content, and you're going to create services and use mechanisms to get people basically addicted to these services. It's kind of like gamification is the marketing speak. What does gamification really mean? It means you're hacking how people process information and our behaviors to get people to continue to use these products where rationally you wouldn't continue to use them so much. And too much of our internet economy is based on those kind of mechanisms.
So I think we've established that we have a problem, and that it's pretty wide-ranging. What comes next? Like, how do we move from an attention-based economy? You focus on the efficiency that companies can provide.
Well, the exciting thing is that, and why I'm very optimistic about the future, in spite of this doom and gloom scenario, I am a techno-optimist, is that society is course correcting, right? No one anticipated what happens to the extremes of attention. These are all unintended consequences, but we've seen a lot of moves back to a norm. We've seen Facebook starting to be responsible, where for the first time, people are using Facebook less last quarter than the quarter before, how they've prioritized personal information to start to make it a healthier environment. We've seen things like Unilever come out and say that they want the platforms to be responsible for them to advertise, one of the biggest advertisers in the world. So it is good that there is a realization and people are starting to course correct. From a business model standpoint, I think you're seeing more and more companies realize that the way to make money on the internet and be viable is to go back to basics. It's back to the fundamental premise of technology. Technology's always existed to make things easier and simpler and more efficient, and heaven forbid you pay for that. And if you pay for that and you pay for that value, that's a viable business. And that's really the idea behind the efficiency economy. Technology makes us more efficient, and we're going to pay for that efficiency. And a lot of very successful businesses have for many, many years in technology been based on that premise, and it's in many ways kind of getting back to our roots of what technology's always been about.
So who are the companies that are doing it well that you think that other companies should model their actions on?
I would say the best example is Uber, but not in the way that everyone's like, oh, we're going to do the Uber for dishwashers and the Uber for this. Think about the premise of Uber, which I'm still fascinated by. It's that the idea that you can build a $50 or $60 billion revenue business because it's easier to hit a button on your app than it is to raise your hand in New York City or to call a dispatcher in other places around the world, right? That extra few seconds of convenience built a $50 billion business. That's all they did. They made it more efficient than any other way. And that's the lesson to learn from Uber, which is if you can make your business more efficient, more frictionless, so that when people have a problem, you are the easiest frictionless way to get that problem solved, you're going to win, and people will pay for that convenience. And that's what it's all about. And that's behind Uber, it's the premise behind Dollar Shave Club, and the premise behind all of these kind of new class of companies that are coming out. It's even the premise behind Netflix, right? We will now pay for the convenience of all this entertainment on demand because it's easy for me and they know what I like, right? And that's much better than sitting through the alternative of channel surfing on my couch and sitting through ads.
There was that debate that, would we ever have a la carte entertainment services? Would people pay for it? Why do I have to pay for 500 channels when I only watch 10? And Netflix came out and said, well, we're just going to give you this one a la carte service. And now there's now everybody's got an a la carte service, and people don't mind spending $10 a month per service, right? As long as they feel like they're getting value.
Right, and that's been a lesson for a long time. Think about back in the internet version 1 when there was mass panic over Napster, and no one's going to pay for music anymore. Guess what? Those services still exist, but people will happily pay for the convenience of Spotify or Apple Music because it's so simple and frictionless. And if you build your business on that convenience, then you're going to be successful. We're seeing it in publishing as well. Admittedly, not for every brand, but you see that companies like The Times and The Guardian and now The Washington Post have started to prove real success building a paid model on that same foundation.
I think that in media, there's a little bit of a difference in that you cannot be publishing duplicative content online and expect to have a sustainable business.
Agreed.
If you're not providing unique value in some way, shape, or form, in news in particular, it's really hard to add unique value on a day after day. We don't need. And we can't support 100 New York Times news organizations online,
right?
Because they're all going to be writing the same stuff.
Yes.
And that's a reckoning that I think is more intractable and harder to deal with.
Definitely, and that's the challenge. And that's the challenge not just for publishing, but for every sector, which is that people need one service to solve their problem. They will pay for efficiency. They don't need 10 services. So if you go back to the Netflix example, the big question is, the world has proven they're going to pay for direct-to-consumer long video, right? But how many services are you going to pay for? Are you going to pay for Amazon Prime, for Disney's new service? Are you going to pay for HBO? That's the open question. Maybe you'll pay for 2, but are you going to pay for 5? Probably not. And that becomes the new battle, which is, can you be that first or second company that captures the consumer's attention, where they're going to pay for efficiency, and then everyone else is going to lose out on that franchise.
And there are limits to how much time people have. I mean,
That's right.
When Netflix is dropping entire seasons at a go, 12 hours of video content, that kills people's weekends.
It kills the weekend.
And there is nothing. I mean, it's not like they have the choice. They don't have the choice to do that for more than one show a weekend.
It's terrible, and I almost dread it. It's like my favorite show comes out, I'm like, oh no, in 3 weeks, my 3 days are shot because of this stupid thing, right?
And there's limits to human endurance.
Yep.
So it'll be a very interesting thing to watch this shape up. I want to ask you a couple of my closing questions I ask everybody. Is there a technology trend? You said you were a techno optimist, but is there a tech trend that concerns you, that keeps you up at night?
That concerns me. That's like a good twist, because it's usually like, what are you excited about, right?
Oh, we'll get to it's the dark side.
I have to say that I would say every technology has a good and a bad, right? So I'm very excited about the future of machine learning, as I talked about before. I'm also incredibly scared when ML gets so good that you can produce completely authentic looking videos that you can't tell the difference between did it happen or was it generated by AI, which is only a matter of time before that happens. I'm excited about the potential of image recognition for face recognition, and then very scared when you look at what's happening in China, where they're putting cameras everywhere and police have real-time access for that stuff. So that's the whole balance. It's like, with great power comes great responsibility, to quote the comic book. And to me, the real question for society is all these new things are incredibly exciting. They all have unintended consequences, but will we manage them responsibly? And that's the big question for the next decade.
Is there a technology, product, or service that you use every day that inspires wonder?
Alexa continues to amaze and inspire me. What I actually get most inspired by is the opposite of what people think. I get inspired by how bad Alexa is. Because when I think about how good Alexa is at some things, like playing music, which is still 10x the best use case of anything else, and I look at how bad it is at some other things, I think, wow, what's exciting is that there's 40 years of innovation ahead of us, of step function improvement, of how these things get better and better and better, and how we in technology get smarter and smarter about using data to create better services that I get pretty excited about. Yeah,
there's a huge upside though, although we still have to answer the trust question. She can do all these things for us, but can we trust what she's telling us?
Definitely true, but humans are naturally trusting creatures. If it's credible and unfortunately, as we've seen, it's not always a good thing we're trusting. But the technology world has repeatedly shown that if you provide a good service for customers and you provide the utility, people will trust it, and they'll trust it with their data, and they'll use it. Companies have to be responsible about it, but there is a good quid pro quo that seems to work.
If people want to follow you online and keep track of what you're doing, how can they do so?
Twitter, AMShap, AMSHAP, my website, aaronshapiro.com, Huge Inc., Huge's website as well.
Very cool. Aaron, thanks so much for talking to me today.
Thanks.
Hope you have a
Fun
great South by
conversation.
Southwest.
Likewise.
That's Fast Forward for today. If you want to see back episodes of this show, including our original interview about 18 months ago, you can find them on PCMag.com, on Apple Podcasts, on Google Play, and everywhere else that fine podcasts are given away for free. Thanks so much for joining us today, and I'll see you in the future.